welcome to this webcast. We're glad you're joining us for another STEMnet webcast from the Office of the Chancellor. This is CSU, NSF REU and IRES programs and awardees. Welcome. I'm your host, Jennifer Wicks, behind the scenes from Learning and Development. Happy to work with the STEMnet team in the Office of Research, Dr. Frank A. Gomez and Monica Alarcon. And we'd like for you to please do put your campus into the poll today. Let us know which campus you're joining from, you're representing today. Also, what are you looking forward to learning in this session? Please do engage throughout with our presenters during their presentations in the chat pod. We look forward to the Q&A at the end of each session. Each presenter will present for about 12 minutes and then have a Q&A as well. So we look forward to your engagement there. With that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Frank A. Gomez, our Executive Director of STEMnet at the Office of the Chancellor. Dr. Gomez, I'll hand it over to you to begin.
Thank you, Jennifer, for the kind introduction and a warm welcome to everyone out there. I hope you and all your families are healthy and safe. It is great you can join us today for our webcast on CSU NSF Research Experiences for Undergrads, REU, and International Research Experiences for Students, IRES, programs and awardees. This marks our 19th webcast to the CSU community. Research experience is one of the most effective avenues for attracting students to and retaining them in science and engineering, and for preparing them for careers in these fields. The REU program provides appropriate and valuable educational experiences for undergraduate students through participation in research. REU projects offer an opportunity to tap the nation's diverse student talent pool and broaden participation in science and engineering. NSF is particularly interested in increasing the numbers of women, underrepresented minorities, and persons with disabilities in research. REU projects are strongly encouraged to involve students who are members of these groups. Historically, the vast majority of REU participants have been junior or senior level undergraduates, students who have typically already committed to a major in STEM, so that the REU program can succeed in attracting students into STEM fields who might not otherwise consider these majors and careers. Projects are encouraged to involve students at even earlier stages in their college experience. Science and engineering research increasingly requires international teams to solve the most complex challenges. Accordingly, leading scientific and engineering facilities, resources, and expertise are distributed around the globe. To remain at the forefront of STEM, the U.S. must train and nurture a cadre of globally engaged STEM students who will thrive in the rapidly changing international landscape. To advance this objective and enhance U.S. leadership in research, the IRES program supports U.S. students to conduct excellent research and engage in high-quality research-related activities abroad and in collaboration with our foreign investigators. IRES projects contribute to the development of a globally competitive and diverse scientific workforce for increased U.S. economic competitiveness. IRES experiences expose U.S. students to an international research community at a critical stage in their careers and serve to establish international networks to bolster their professional development. Today we will hear from 3 NSF program officers on both the REU and IRES programs and 5 CSU NF supportive faculty to speak on their projects and more. Before we begin, I want to remind the audience to use the open chat box on their screens to type in their questions. Our speakers, when not presenting, will make every effort to respond in real time to your questions. So let's begin. It's with great pleasure to introduce from the National Science Foundation, Drs. Melissa Olson, Associate Program Director, Herman Sintim, Program Director, and Sally O'Connor, Program Director, who will speak on the National Science Foundation programs. To all of you, the floor is yours. So thank you very much for participating, and have a great day, okay?
Thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Our next speaker is Mehran Mazari from Cal State LA. His talk is entitled Collaborative REU Proposals, Challenges, and Opportunities. Mehran.
Thank you, Frank, for the opportunity, and thanks everyone for tuning in today. So I'm, let me go back one here. I'm Mehran Mazari, Associate Professor of Civil Engineering at California State University, Los Angeles. And before we start, I would like to thank our CalSed LA collaborators, Drs. Tono Rodriguez-Nico, Dr. Jingjing Li, and Dr. Mohamed Pouramayun, who helped us in our REU mentoring program this summer. And I'm very glad that the NSF team already covered a lot of nuts and bolts of the REUs and IRESs. So that made my presentation much easier, so I don't have to go through all the details. I'm just going to give you the perspective from the other side of the table as a PI for one of the recently awarded REUs. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions. So our REU was awarded back in 2020, and it's in fact a collaborative proposal, and it's titled Research Experience for Undergraduates in Underground Infrastructure. And it's under the Division of Engineering Education and the Engineering Workforce Development Program. And we had two other institutions, Colorado School of Mines and Lehigh University, as the other two collaborative sites on this REU proposal. And the way it works is we basically submit one collaborative proposal, but each site will be independently funded, and they have their own, each site has their own PIs, and they run their site independently, but we have some sort of, I'm going to go through the program that we do here, but we have some sort of collaborative workshops and seminars for the entire cohort so that they get to know each other and they interact with each other. So just a quick overview of our site objectives. The main objective, as again the NSF team mentioned, is to attract, engage, and educate undergraduate students from institutions that are predominantly limited in research. And in this case, we are focusing on underground infrastructure and engineering research. And the goal was to get them involved in high quality research experience and hopefully hands-on. This was before, obviously, pandemic, and to make them ready for their, with the help of a series of professional development activities. And again, the goal is to encourage undergraduate students in STEM with the focus on women and minorities. So I'm going to tell you our story, that how this proposal started. It actually started back in 2017. We had another research center funded to the same group of institutions with the School of Mines and Lehigh, and that proposal was actually a transportation proposal that's called University Transportation Center, and it's focusing on underground infrastructure. And so we thought, why don't we put together a proposal with the same partner institutions and focus on undergraduate students' research. So we submitted the proposal in 2017. It was not funded. We did it again in 2018. Again, it was not funded. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that we had people telling us that if you are declined twice, don't even try again. But we did, and we were successful for the third submission. And as you can see, that this is a picture from this past summer that we had. That this is actually the Colorado cohort that actually visited an actual underground construction site during their research experience. So it actually happened after that. Now, a little bit of a list of characteristics of our collaborative proposal. Again, as mentioned before, each site is running independently. We will hire 4 students per site. And one of the advantages of our proposal, or our collaborative proposal, was that we are basically geographically distributed from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast. The way it works is that you would, each PI at each institution would work with at least 4 other faculty mentors to help the students work on their research projects. And again, it was originally planned for an in-person experience, but we had to convert it to an online site. For us, it was completely online. For the other 2 sites, for Minds, it was completely in person. And for Lehigh, it was a hybrid. I guess 2 of the students that did it online and the other 2 did it in person. Now, some of the challenges, again, as the NSF team mentioned, the recruitment is very important. Reaching out to the institutions, we had a list of all the external institutions that we know we wanted to reach out to, including community colleges and the other institutions that are predominantly undergrad students with limited research experience. And then once we transferred, or once we hired the students, running the program was actually also very important. How to structure the group cohort. We had a series of actually 1 or 2 workshops for faculty mentors to train them how to work with the students. We had a series of professional development skills for the students, like the resume writing, how to get involved in research, technical writing, and so on. And the group was basically, besides their research experience, they were really excited about these particularly focused workshops. They were really appreciative and excited about these professional development seminars and workshops. And then every 1 or 2 weeks, we had an entire group meeting together and unofficially or informally exchanging ideas, their research ideas, and talking about the research together. And that was also one of the other things that the students was really excited about. I already talked about the virtual experience. And then the assessment and evaluation. Of course, we had an independent evaluator that did the evaluation for us. And so in summary, it's important to leverage your campus education and research resources, as well as other programs that the NSF team mentioned. It's always good to look for innovative and multidisciplinary topics, engaging other faculty mentors, recruiting students from diverse backgrounds, and also multi-site REU proposals. I guess that's pretty much it for what I have. I would be more than happy to answer any questions, and I'm open to any future collaborations. Thank you, and back to you, Dr. Gomez.
Thank you, Mehran, for a very interesting talk. It's great to see you from my old institution, Cal State LA. Question, what are the challenges of implementing a remote REU-Site?
Thanks, Frank. I guess, again, this was a surprise probably to everyone who, especially to us who our site was just funded the year before the pandemic, or probably at the start of the pandemic. So we had to really adjust all of our previously planned programs to convert it to a completely remote experience. And again, in some cases, we were able to offer it as a hybrid experience, and in Colorado they were able to actually offer it in person. So it's always good to plan ahead and have these flexibilities ready for these types of challenges to make sure we can handle that.
Well, great. I'm glad you were able to pivot, and hopefully the pivoting will not be for the foreseeable future, huh?
Yeah.
So great, Mehran. I appreciate you participating.
Thank
and
you.
if anyone asks you questions, I hope you'll be able to answer them in the chat box, okay?
Of course. Thank
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Betsy Reed from CSU San Marcos. Her talk is entitled Reflections on CSUSM's REU-Site, NGS from Beetles to Beer. That's
Thank you, Frank, and thank you for the organizers, and thank you, NSF, for allowing me to share our experiences with our program at Cal State San Marcos. Like Mehran, our site was awarded in 2019. In 2019, we had about 150 applicants, and we accepted 10 students that worked during that summer. During the summer of 2020, because of the pandemic and the imminent shutdown of the university, we canceled the program. But with the help of the university administration, we were able again in this past summer to have an in-person program at Cal State San Marcos. Our program is a 10-week program. The proposal was written to accept 10 participants. This year, owing to the lost opportunities last year, we were able to write a supplement, and we were able to take on 12 students. This year, again, we had about 150 applicants. Of those that were accepted into the program, 4 came from Cal State San Marcos, and 8 came from either small institutions without research infrastructure, without the opportunity for much research. Several came from community colleges, and 8 of those individuals were underrepresented. One of the reasons that we're able to take on a couple more students from our own campus is that Cal State San Marcos, like many of the Cal States, we are a Hispanic serving institution. So we're able to take a few more. During the program, the focus of the program is next generation sequencing. All of the projects that students are engaged in involve some sort of next generation sequencing from Beetles to Beer. Our enrichment activities, students, in addition to working in individual research labs, get together once a week. These enrichment activities focus on career opportunities to continue education and obtain their PhD, and professional development skills. This year, students went on a virtual field trip to UCSD. In the previous summer in 2019, we went up to UC Riverside, visited several labs, talked to PIs, talked to the Dean of Graduate Studies. There was a graduate student panel in both instances, and it was a really informative day, both the virtual and the in-person, although the students, not surprisingly, this year would have preferred that our field trip had been in person. Students also attend an Inspire lecture series, and this is an event that occurs between, I think, 3 and 6 in the afternoon. 3 graduate students from the Scripps Research Institute come and share their unique academic journeys, and then tell a little bit about the research projects they're involved in as candidates for their PhD at Scripps Research Institute. And thereafter, additional students from Scripps come up, and there's a small poster presentation. We had 3 research seminars this summer. One was from USC, and he talked about genome variation and single molecule sequencing. We had someone from the San Diego Safari Park who came and talked about how next generation sequencing is being applied to endangered species. And our third seminar, I'm forgetting off the top of my head. The third one I think was from a faculty member here at Cal State San Marcos who talked about some microbiome work that she was doing. We also had a mentor fest. This is kind of like a speed dating format where we bring in both academic and industry mentors, and students meet and chat with them and rotate through. They meet for 8 minutes with each mentor before moving on to the next one. We had a career panel and then a couple of poster workshops. In addition to the enrichment activities, we spend an hour and a half each week working with students on bioinformatics and learning how to write a manuscript. And then the program culminates with a poster showcase. Highlights from the 2021 program. I think the biggest highlight was we worked with the students. The students in this cohort had an ambitious goal, and that was to write a genome announcement. So they learned how to assemble and annotate a novel genome. My co-PI, Arun Setharaman, and I worked with the students. We introduced them to a number of bioinformatics tools using Galaxy and using some shell scripting. The students didn't assemble the genome, but they annotated the genome and used a number of different programs. And then they actually worked together to write the manuscript. And this was really a empowering experience for the students. It motivated them, it built cohesion, and they felt really proud of what they had accomplished. And this manuscript is being submitted to G3. The other thing is we have a blog for the students. So each week, one student takes responsibility for writing a blog post, sharing what they're doing in their lab and what they've learned. And this is real fun, both for the students to share what they're doing and also for the other students to see the challenges and the struggles that others may be having in the lab. It also is informative for faculty to see what students are thinking, what they know, what their challenges are. So each student takes takes responsibility for one blog post. The students also organized a Slack page this year. This wasn't done the previous year, but the Slack page was a huge benefit in terms of, again, building cohesion. They shared their analyses that they were doing for the genome paper with one another on Slack. They were able to ask questions and connect with one another on the fly. We were also fortunate enough to have a graduate student mentor this year, and she was a huge benefit as well, and was able to keep the group focused and together. A lot more social activities went on this year because of the graduate student mentor and the Slack page. There are a couple things that we would like to do differently next year. One is to have a more robust mentorship training program before the summer. We had a couple of new faculty members this year, and I don't think we spent enough time really enforcing or reinforcing what the REU is about and what our goals are. And so I'm hoping that we can have a more robust training program at the beginning of next year. We had a number of students, 2 students this year, who were rising sophomores, so they were at a younger stage in their academic career. And I think they felt a little bit behind This came up very quickly in some of the blog posts and just some of the Slack exchanges. So we were able to remedy that. And I think when working with students that are at a younger stage, that it's important to reach out more frequently to them. They were brought into the fold and I think ended up having a really great summer thereafter. But it was just being at the beginning, needing a little bit more hands-on support from us. And then the other thing is every year we go bunion hunting the first week of the program, and we typically go on the first day of the run, and we haven't been too successful these 2 years, but we've heard that had we gone on the second or third day of the run, that we would have been more successful. So that's something we'd like to do differently as well. The benefits of hosting an REU program have been huge for Cal State San Marcos. In addition to the REU, we have a larger college-wide summer scholars program, and we've able to leverage the REU program to solicit funds to support the larger program. So we've been able to solicit funds from Gen and Tech, Illumina, Hologic to support, and Viasat to support I think about 35 students from across math and biochemistry, computer science. So that's been a big boom. The REU, some of the REU projects have been integrated into the curriculum and have provided wonderful experiences for students at Cal State San Marcos in molecular cell biology and biotechnology courses. The program also led to some donations from Illumina. I think we got $7,000 to $10,000 worth of reagents from Illumina that were donated. We were able to secure an iSeq 100 that the students used in the program. And then the data generated from the program helped to advance some of the research of our faculty. So it's been a huge success and a really wonderful experience for faculty and students at Cal State San Marcos. I think one of the biggest challenges for us is in supporting students when they return to their home institutions. And we have thought of a couple different ways that we might be able to do this, and this would be maybe to have some Zoom coffee hours. I think oftentimes when they go to their home institution, they don't know how to continue what they've been doing without having that research infrastructure there. So maybe connecting with a Zoom coffee hour every quarter, finding out what they're doing and how they're progressing, whether it's with their graduate school applications, how to find a lab to work in where they are or whatever. But I think that's something we'd like to do. And then perhaps we should provide mentors with some resources to help the mentors as well to keep connected with their mentees. So with that, I think, the SLAG, student learning assessment tool that Sally spoke about is wonderful. It's very easy. I would recommend including some free response questions because these two can be very informative. What did they learn that surprised them? What did you discover about yourself as a young research scientist? How can we improve this program? So we've benefited tremendously from SLAG as well as the free response questions that we have been able to add to the assessment. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it back to you, Frank.
Thank you, Betsy. Great talk. I know I've been having a number of discussions with Jackie Trishman, your dean, regarding REU programs, and some questions she's had, really more so regarding process and nothing regarding specifically issues with your program, but more on how NSF could hope to streamline the whole program so that it could be more equity-minded in terms of those areas of the country that are more cost-prohibitive because of the amount it costs to house students in certain big city regions versus more rural areas. But, aside from that, a question that comes up here is, what advice do you have for someone in our system who's interested in writing an REU proposal for the first time?
I would echo the comments of Sally and Melissa. I think that one of the biggest challenges in starting to think about writing an REU, a successful REU application, is really identifying a coherent and intellectual theme for the program, and one that will tie in with, that is not just built around the enrichment activities per se, but one that ties all of the research endeavors of the individual faculty involved in the program together. So I think Melissa or Sally mentioned about having a paragraph or two from each faculty member that describes the research project, their hypotheses, what skills students would learn. I would add to that a sentence that ties the research project to the overarching theme. So I think identifying that theme is really, really important. And then, as you mentioned, Frank, I think in California, we are in a unique situation, and addressing the budget early on and figuring out how you can, because of the cost of living differences here in California versus other regions of the country, it's essential that you start working on that budget early. And sometimes, like in our instance, we have been able to work with housing. They've been able to give us some friends and family rates, if you will, to help with the problem of the housing costs. But that is another element that can be a challenge, is how to work with that budget and make sure that we can do what we're supposed to be doing. So those would be my advice is identifying that theme early, making sure that it's coherent and intellectually stimulating and can tie all of the projects together, and getting started on the budget early.
Great, thanks, Betsy. I appreciate your participation, and hopefully you can stay around to answer any questions that may be in the chat box. So great, thank you. Our next speaker is Zair Ibragimov from Cal State Fullerton. The title of his presentation is Engaging Students in Research Internationally.
Okay, thank you, Frank, and thank you everyone for joining. I would like to briefly discuss my recent NSF IRES program. And the program, the international site for the program was the Uzbekistan Academy of Sciences. The program ran for 3 summers, 2017, 18, 19, and I guess we were lucky enough to finish it before the pandemic started in 2020. So program objectives, the overview, was that, so it's well known that the modern research, contemporary research in STEM fields has become truly international endeavor. Hence, it's important that our students understand this early on and start cementing their international contacts, networks of peers and researchers. So our aim for this IRES program in Uzbekistan was to give US students 10-week summer research experience under the mentorship of top mathematicians and STEM scientists from Uzbekistan who are well qualified to train our students. So as I mentioned, program was funded by the National Science Foundation grant number, as well as by the California State University Louis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation program. That program is in turn funded by NSF and the Chancellor's Office. And here's the location of the international site, Uzbekistan. I think many people understand these 5 stands there: Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan. So Uzbekistan is one of them, it's there. It's in Central Asia. So project overview. So under the project, we had 3 cohorts, each with 10 or 10 students during each summer of 17, 18, and 19. So total of 29 students. The first two cohorts were only math majors. We had 19 math majors. And in the third cohort, 2019 summer, we had 2 biology majors and 2 physics majors included in the program. So we were about to expand the program to other areas of STEM. The project gave students an opportunity to expand their research skills while at the same time establishing their network of international connections. Okay? And also program provided ample opportunity for our students to learn about the benefits of engaging internationally. Okay? So here you see the picture. I think it's the second cohort in front of the Institute of Mathematics there. Some students are taking courses or attending some meetings. So activities, of course, the major activity was conducting research at their respective institutes. So most students were assigned to Institute of Mathematics and later to Institute of Astronomy and Institute of Biology and Biochemistry. So these institutes really have a very nice environment for research. They employ about 50 to 100 researchers. They only do research, no teaching. So they are full-time researchers. They run daily and weekly seminars, lots of them in various areas of math and other areas of STEM. So it's always lively environment there. They have lots of undergraduate students attending seminars, local students, graduate and postdocs, and so it's very lively environment. And they also students were exposed to a different style of teaching and mentorship. That's different than our students are used to here in the U.S. It's a different kind of style, relation between mentors and students. And also students were able to visit several local universities there while they were there for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and meet with local faculty, local students. And they did lots of joint activities like holding joint panels of international education. Many of the students presented talks, whether it was on the research they were conducting or their previous research or just some kind of cultural, sharing their cultural experience in the US or maybe in other places. Okay? And some of the students also decided to take language courses, whether it was in Uzbek or in Russian. So it was lots of activities there. Cultural activity was a very important component for this program even when we started writing the proposal, because Uzbekistan provides very unique environment when it comes to cultural activities. For example, 4 sites in Uzbekistan are listed as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And Uzbekistan has a very rich scientific and cultural heritage dating back to 2,000, 3,000 years. And our students were able to visit these places as part of their cultural enrichment activities. And so you can see here our students giving some interviews. The program was very new to Uzbekistan. It was officially the first time that American students visited Uzbekistan. So the media was all over the place when visited other universities. Media was there to highlight the events and highlight our students. And our students were also very eager to share their experiences in the U.S. and their new experiences in Uzbekistan. And they will even participate in some kind of talk shows, daily shows or something you can see at the bottom. So it was, the cultural activity was very important, and I'm trying to move this screens, these videos, and okay, I got it. All right, thank you. So, and I believe that it's very important to have this very rich cultural component, because we know that some students may not know it, but many students join these programs knowing what, say, what their location or the region that they are going to present, what opportunities they offer culturally, for example. So they want to be part of that, and they want to experience that culture. So that's why I believe that this rich cultural component is always important for this program. Results, of course, we always ask our students to make at least one presentation based on their research when they return to US, whether it's at their institutions or local or regional conferences. And so we had well over 20 presentations like that. And also biggest expectation was that our participants produce joint publications with their mentors. Of course, it's not realistic in 2 months to produce anything publishable, maybe. But another good thing was that because it was through Zoom later, so they continued their collaboration with their peers or their mentors, and they ended up at the end published 17 peer-reviewed journals, which can all be found on our website. And here you can see a picture. GMM is Joint Mathematics Meeting. It's a national meeting of the American Mathematical Society. So our students, we had a special session in that meeting every year. Well, 2019, we had our students come to join, this meeting is usually hosts about 6,000 people in the meeting. So they come and they presented their research. And JMM 2020 will also make it in person because JMMs are always occur in January, early January. And we invited our mentors from Uzbekistan and others. So other students from other REU or IRES programs joined our sessions. Lessons learned. So it's well known that this international research or engaging our students in international research is considered as high impact practice because it contributes to the pipeline of more diverse, robust, international trained US population of scientists. Indeed, participants of our program, 14 of them are currently in PhD programs, 6 are in master's program, and 3 students, it's the third cohort, they decided to take a gap year instead of going to graduate schools virtually. So we are still in touch with our students, and I check with them all the time. And also I believe that inclusion of professional development and networking activities, like we did with the Uzbekistan program, where students really engage with local students and universities, and as well as including a very rich cultural component, I believe is a key. One of the other requirements for our students was that they write one-page cultural feedback, what they experienced culturally, and that we use to, for improve future cohorts. So we have 29 of them, but I'm going to read an excerpt from one of them. It says, to me, one of the most important and impactful parts of my IRES position was the opportunity to observe and appreciate Uzbek culture, to see all of this while simultaneously doing substantial mathematical research. As an undergraduate, was a terrific opportunity that would not have been nearly the same anywhere else. I felt that I have left this program with a better picture of what graduate mathematics will be like in a substantially broader perspective to look at the world with. Next step is, of course, we also took a gap year due to pandemic. Now the plans are underway to apply for another IRES program from NSF to continue. Not exactly the same program, but somewhat similar. Now we have experience with this, so we want to add some more components and change certain things and make it maybe hybrid because of the current situations. So we plan to continue, and program was already going well, and we actually, for 2020, which was unfortunately canceled, we had 12 students that were placed into our program from other, for example, Olson alliances and other similar programs. And we also were able to get IRES Track 2 grant recently, and we plan to run these advanced studies institutes, 3 of them in Uzbekistan, in the next 2-3 years. And this program is for graduate students only. So to summarize a little bit, I have, here are some lead foreign mentors that will mentor our students, and this is our students, 13 students who participated from Cal State Fullerton. We really had a very diverse group of students. For example, 11 female, 8 Hispanics, and 7 Asian Pacific Islanders. Right, thank you very much. Back to you, Frank.
Thank you, Zair. Very interesting talk, and for someone who's ran several different IRESs in their lifetime, they take a great lot of work, and I can relate to the Uzbekistan being kind of a I don't know, an outlier, but certainly how do you get people interested in a place that they may not even know how to say. I had that same experience when I ran one in Hungary, in Debrecen, Hungary, which is on the eastern part near Romania, until I visited there. And I thought, this is a wonderful, wonderful place. So, the same question goes to you. How do you, inspire, impress students to both apply to your program? How do you recruit them if they don't even can find Uzbekistan on the map?
Thank you. Great question, Frank. Yes, yes. As you mentioned, it takes a lot of work, especially for. So let me tell you this: we had really two types of students. It was a national program, so we had students from Princeton, from Brown, and other parts. So there are students who already have international experience. They probably maybe never been to Uzbekistan, but they know the Uzbekistan, they know the area, Central Asia. So they knowingly apply and they want to go and explore this and experience this. But on the other hand, we have our local students in California, from Cal State mostly, that I talked to them, they never heard about these programs. And you have to work with them individually. I mostly work with their parents. I said, oh, bring your parents, let's Zoom with them. In each of the 3 years, we invited about 4 or 5 parents for dinner to my place here in California, so that they get to know us. They know that I'm gonna be with students there all the time during the program, that I am originally from Uzbekistan. So working with parents and working with students individually kind of help us in with recruiting and with kind of convincing students that yes, it is a nice place, safe place, and so it's individual work, I would say.
Great, thank you, Zair. I appreciate your talk, and I'm certainly the attendees appreciate it too. So hopefully you can stay around if you have some time to answer any questions that come in the chat box. So great, and good luck with your program and in the future. Okay. Our next speaker is Paul Laris from Cal State Long Beach. His talk is entitled "In It for the Long Run: Developing an REU-Site with a Private Landowner."
And it's great to hear about all these projects. Personally, I'm actually quite intrigued by this IRES idea now. I haven't actually heard of that one before, and what I'm going to talk about in REU. It's a brand new project, and we'll be starting our first cohort in summer of 2022. So I'll be talking more about how the ideas came about for the REU and sort of what I went through. It's more of a story of what we did to develop the REU, as opposed to presenting any kind of findings of how things went. The title is "In It for the Long Run: Developing an REU-Site with a Private Landowner." And the long run here really is my own search over time to find a good site for long-term environmental and geographic research. Also for the landowner himself, who's been looking to collaborate with an academic to have students come to his ranch and learn and do things. And also I think it's really our long run in terms of our own partnership now. We see this REU really as a step in the direction of a very long-term collaboration that we both have. One of my ideas at CSU has long been that we're in a good position to conduct long-term environmental research, especially when the research is integrated into our own regular field courses like I teach. Unlike R1 schools, we can afford to take on these longer projects because we're not under the gun to get a new grant every few years. And I found this kind of long-term research can produce publishable material and also can involve many, many, many students over time. And so that was part of the impetus for developing this REU. The name of the REU-Site program is Tracking Land Change, Working Ranch to Working Reserve. It involves conducting applied research at a 722-acre River Ridge Ranch. It's a beautiful location. It's located just outside of Sequoia National Forest, not too far from Sequoia National Park, which I hope will be a nice way to help recruit students for our program, that Sequoia name. The area is primarily oak woodlands, as you can see in this picture. There's a pasture area, there's a riparian area, and we're going to be using much of the site for our research. The overarching objective is to work with students to use geospatial technologies, things like conservation drones, remote sensing, GIS, and GPS, and statistical analysis to analyze, to assist the ranch owner to shift his ranch from a working cattle ranch to a working reserve. So our goals are to find ways to improve biodiversity as well as the ecosystem services provided while demonstrating an economic model that other small ranches in California might be able to adopt. This includes generating income from alternative sources such as carbon sequestration, hip camp, and so on. Just a couple of points I'm going to cover today. Again, it's really a story of the history. I'll talk about some opportunities and also an important constraint I find with REU compared to other NSF grants. One important note for those of you considering an REU, the site programs, as you've heard from NSF representatives, they're different from other programs, and it's important to keep that in mind. Be sure you read up on those differences. As a geographer and environmental scientist, I've always been focused on particular sites for my research. And I think it's really important to find the right site and the right partner, and that was part of my long run. So this story really begins about 20 years ago, building on a long tradition at Cal State Long Beach. We've had REUs before. We've also had NASA-funded programs to involve undergraduates and even high school seniors in research. In fact, when I first joined the program 19 years ago, I was thrown right into this in the summertime and taking students out into the field to collect plant data and then to bring them back into the laboratory to analyze it. It was very stimulating work, but it was also a lot of work. Think about keeping a group of 12 high school students occupied in a GIS laboratory for 8 hours a day. It was much easier to keep them occupied in the field, I might add. They were quite excited about getting out of the lab. How do you keep them occupied? What do you do with all those cell phones? We had a basket at the front of the room. You drop your cell phone when you sit down at your desk. I've always thoroughly enjoyed the field, and I gradually became a leader in our department for running field geography and environmental science courses. And have gradually developed this model where we get students to do their own research projects, to work in teams, to formulate their own questions, to develop their own methods, and to carry this out in the field. And this kind of experience, just teaching over and over years on end, really helped me think through this REU site design. I've always felt one of the biggest lessons you learn when doing field research, whether it's in the U.S. or in Africa, is that no matter how well you're prepared, when you get to the field, something's going to change, something's going to be different. And so I've gotten away from doing what I would say called canned research, where I sort of know what the answer is, and having things that are much more experimental, and students and I learn together when we go into the field. My research also follows in the footsteps of colleagues such as Chris Lee, who was very successful with these kinds of undergraduate research programs, both NSF and NASA. I myself have 2 NSF grants, not REUs or IRES grants, but regular NSF grants. And so I thought that if I could find a suitable site for REU, hey, this should be an easy to get one of these grants. I have NSF experience. I've worked on panels before. I work in an institution that's minority serving, and department with a strong record of undergraduate research. This shouldn't be too tough, right? Well, not so fast, I found out, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. One of the keys I say is you got to find a good partner. I was lucky in this, but it took a while. I've been looking for a long-term site for some time, and largely through my projects for teaching classes and the GDEP work. taking students out into the field. I collaborated with people at different state parks, at UC reserve areas, Catalina Island for a private group. I was frustrated by the difficulty, though, of developing these long-term relationships that you need to set up a project. Some, there's too much bureaucracy. Others, there's too much turnover. Many people in the state don't have time because they're very under-supported. And so I needed to find a partner. Fortunately, a former grad student of mine said, hey, you got to go up and check out River Ridge Ranch. There's a guy up there who really wants to involve students and faculty in research. And so I went up, drove up, and met Gary at River Ridge Ranch. And I found he very much wanted to collaborate with me. He's a unique rancher, I should say. He's been ranching for over 20 years, but he also has a PhD in biology. He's his specialty is desert lizards. And so he understands the importance of field research. He understands the importance of education. And so I think I had this feeling that he might be a good partner for me to develop this relationship with. For those interested in finding partners for field work, I definitely recommend checking out the UC Reserve System. They have sites all over California. Very well managed, very well run, great people that you can talk to, and they're always looking to involve students and faculty in research. So that's one tip. We did take quite a while to develop our partnership, but it began with students, bringing students out in the field to collect data, shown here doing soil samples in our burned area on that one site. Gary was always involved. He gave a great talk to the students. He was very animated. He was very interested in what we were doing. Later, we used UAVs or conservation drones to fly his entire site and produce a map of trees. So we were beginning to give Gary some data, some feedback, and some products that he was interested in to help forge that partnership. And we began to talk about some longer-term research interests that we both had. Eventually, we also decided to do a little infrastructure development. The ranch was a great place if you wanted to camp. But we built a couple of bunkhouses together so that we now have a place to house students when they visit. Gary's always very welcoming and providing housing for faculty who are doing research up there. And as you can see here on the left, perhaps, that little circle, that's our indoor-outdoor classroom. We have an outdoor kitchen. Basically, everything was in place for our REU at this point. We also started to do more experimenting with technology. Here we have mounted a simple methane sensor on an inexpensive drone to fly over fire. One of my research interests is detecting emissions from fires, and we wanted to see if we could sense differences in methane if our fuel was wet or dry. And we tried a variety of different research out at the ranch and got master students involved. A former master student who's now getting her PhD is also involved. And so we've really developed this trust and commitment and collaboration with Gary out at the ranch. So in 2019, we decided it was time. I sat down to write a research proposal. Gary had made a plan to remove cattle from his ranch. First time in 100 years, he would halt irrigation and remove cattle. So we were very much ready to go. Well, for some challenges, I thought, as I mentioned, that doing an REU would come naturally. Some of the things to think about is we know that intellectual focus and broader implications are very familiar to any NSF writer, but there's some different things you have to think about in these REUs. It's less about writing research questions and more about thinking about the goals and objectives, which tend to be very applied and very student learning oriented. NSF wants students to be involved in developing research questions, designing their own research, which is quite a lofty goal for a 2-month period. My idea was that the trick was to create a nice broad research framework to let students develop their own topics within that broader framework. That 20-year experience I had taking students out into the field and let them develop their own topics definitely helped in my thinking to develop the proposal. And that's why I was quite surprised when we got the results back from our first NSF submission, and we were dinged for what? For failing to clearly state how students would be integrated into the research part. This was funny because I'm laughing here because actually that's our strength. And we do this all the time. We do this every semester. I was so set on writing a proposal that would reach that bar of intellectual merit, which I knew the R1 reviewers would find important, that I neglected the most important thing to describe in great detail how we actually engage students in research. Fortunately, the rewrite wasn't that tough. We were funded, that we involved fewer students. We had proposed 10 students for 6 weeks, and they came back and said, we'd like you to do 8 students for 8 weeks, fewer students. I was worried that we'd be having too much money per student, but it turns out this is what NSF actually wanted us to do. One difficulty is it's very difficult to work faculty support into these proposals. NSF only allows you 1 month summer salary. How are you going to have an in-depth, deep learning experience where students and faculty work together if you can really only pay one faculty member for 1 month and the program itself is 2 months? I can talk more about that in the Q&A if you'd like. What are we doing now? Well, COVID was a bit of a blessing for us because it put off starting our program for the year. So I just met with our group yesterday. Got 2 graduate students involved. One of them's already funded. One of them we funded by our grant. They're going to help develop the outreach website and our own database. These are things that we'll need to have for any successful REU program. So in summary, REUs are tough to get for a site project. Be sure to develop your relationship with your partners. Have a good track record of working in the field with students at your site, whatever that kind of site might be. Chat with other REU supported faculty to get the scoop and alternatives to how to fund faculty. And don't forget to highlight your strengths in your proposal. Sometimes we overlook the obvious thing, focusing on what we might think is our shortcut. Thank you for your time.
Paul, thanks for your presentation. I think, we could talk probably ad infinitum about federal agency suggestion box, but that's for another time. So, let's keep in contact. So, thanks for participating. Our next speaker is Corey Garza from CSU Monterey Bay Regional Ocean Science REU. Corey, floor is yours.
Great. Yeah, thanks, everyone. I'll be talking about our Ocean Science REU site here at Cal State Monterey Bay. So just to give you some background on where this project came out of, it has to do with the numbers in terms of underrepresented students in the ocean sciences. And so one of NSF's last surveys of current graduate students, the numbers are about 13% of all ocean science graduate students identify as underrepresented. If you look at biology, those numbers are a little higher. It's about 18 to 20%. Thereabouts. And if you look at those, like, oh, that's not that bad. It's when you look at the whole number comparisons. When you look at the whole numbers, it's about 379 total underrepresented in the ocean science related disciplines compared to about 9,500. So it has to just do with the sheer number difference overall in the disciplines. And so, but if you just look at in general, you'll see that there's very few underrepresented students going into the ocean sciences. And this paper came out a couple of years ago in Nature Geoscience. It's the Bernard and Copperduck paper. It's talking about no progress in diversity in the geosciences in the last 40 years. And pretty much what it's demonstrating is you have very few underrepresented students actually getting graduate degrees. And so if you look at this far right graph here, it's showing the total number of students by group in here getting degrees. And you can see it's pretty low. And if you look over here, this blue line is the number of underrepresented students getting ocean science PhDs. And the reason that I have that circled there, that little dip there, that's the year I got my PhD. And so you can see that the numbers really haven't changed all that much. And if you look at, why do we have so few students going into disciplines like the ocean sciences? There's a number of reasons people have looked at, the lack of personal connection, that many of the issues we look at in the ocean sciences just don't connect with the community that some of our students are coming out of. Unclear understanding by students what we actually do. It's not unusual for me to talk to students and they're surprised we use computers in ocean science. There's students that are surprised that, genetics gets used outside of, a lab space. And so there are a lot of sort of reasons for that. Even some of the messaging that we use. If you look at this picture right here, if you look at the picture on the left, the few guys on the deck of a boat, they're bringing some equipment around. That's kind of your standard graduate student brochure. Recruitment, I Google construction jobs, and that's what shows up on the right. And they're almost mirror images of each other. So if you're a student who maybe comes from sort of a blue collar background, like these jobs don't look any different to you. In fact, that other picture on the left is actually sending other messages as well. One, you have to be a guy. You have to be physically active, so if you're disabled. And so there's a lot of issues that pop up with some of the messaging that we have. And then the other one that we have to sort of contend with is the historic overemphasis of certain fields. I'm a graduate of Cal State LA. From day one, when I walked onto that campus in the biology program, I was given all these NIH options, go to medical school, go be a dentist. And so there tends to be this overemphasis with certain STEM fields, especially as they're targeted towards underrepresented groups. And so this REU program was really designed in large part to try to address this issue of the lack of representation in the ocean sciences. And so we were awarded this back in about 8 years ago, back in about 2014. And we're a fairly unique model within the REU network. We're a distributed REU model. And so we administer the program here at CSUMB, but then we partner with a number of regional ocean science institutions that are about 10 to 15 minutes north or south of our campus. This includes Elkhorn Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve, Hopkins Marine Station of Stanford University, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, Moss Landing Marine Labs, and the Naval Postgraduate School. The way in general the program works, students apply to us, and then they have a list of mentors at all the partner campuses that they can work with, and they usually choose up to 3 mentors across any of our partner networks. They live on our campus. We have dorms there. They get their meals from us. Then we have a commute system set up where they either commute north or south of the campus, or if they're working with faculty at my campus, they just walk across the street to our science building. We do have a special focus on underrepresented students, and then we've had a full REU component ever since the inception of the program. We've actually have been utilizing Zoom-type web professional development webinars for our students in the fall that focus on prepping for their first conference, writing that first CV, writing that first resume, how to apply for subsequent internships, or how to apply for graduate school. And so we've had this kind of constant engagement because that was one of the issues that we noted was pretty persistent in our REU program, this kind of immediate disconnect from the program. And so we're trying to sort of retain connection with our students. I talked about we're the first and we're still the only ocean science REU program in the CSU system. And so we're funded through the Geoscience Directorate at NSF. So it's a little bit different than some of the directorates you might have heard about earlier today. We have a special emphasis on recruiting first generation, low income and underserved students who come from research limited institutions. And then we give preference to sophomores and juniors in our selection process. Now, one of our first things that we do is we actively reach out. And so, our recruitment strategy has an active component. We don't do passive recruitment. And so we actually do community college visits. So we coordinate with programs at local and actually regional community colleges and actually do workshops with the students there on how to successfully apply to our program. We do email blasts. And when I say email blasts, what I don't mean is I just send an email out into the void. We've cultivated relationships with people at different institutions, and then we send them those emails. And so we're considered a trusted partner. I've got a colleague at Howard, and he's quite frank that when he gets a lot of these REU emails, he just deletes them because he doesn't know who you are or how you're going to treat his students. And so we cultivate these relationships before we do a lot of these email blasts out to try to recruit. We have active recruitment at different conferences, either at places like SOCNAS or things that are aligned with our particular discipline, AGU, the American Geophysical Union, or ASLO, the Association for the Sciences of Limnology and Oceanography. We're on a number of listservs where we also post, so you can see a few of them there. And then we actually have a full-time REU staff, so we're a little bit different in the REU network in that when I was awarded this grant, I was awarded a few other grants, and our provost at the time created a full-time science education director who actually oversees this program. And so she's Dr. Laura Good, and she's fully funded by the state to help run this program and a few other ocean science ed programs. We also have administrative staff, so part of our administrative staff comes out of our admin budget, and then we have a summer graduate student TA that's funded by our grant as well. And so we're fairly well staffed, and that allows us to engage in a lot of these activities. So when the students come in, they choose from one of 4 general themes because we have so many partners. We just can't have a few projects. We have a lot of projects. So they go into a general marine biology or ecology theme. They can choose from marine geology, like we have the Monterey Canyon there. It's a really popular research area for students coming to our program. We offer ocean engineering. We're one of only 3 programs in the U.S. that offer that because of our partnership with the Navy School and the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. The only other 2 are the MIT Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute REU and then the Scripps Institution Oceanography REU have engineering. And then we have a general oceanography theme. And surprisingly, like the engineering, the ecology themes are actually our 2 most popular ones. Beyond the research, there's a lot of professional development that happens. So students come in to do technical or scientific writing training. We give them some hands-on skills with scientific boating. We do a lot of poster prep with them. And then we actually have a lot of networking workshops for them over the summer where they can then go to the conferences and then actually use some of those skill sets. So you're seeing one of our first cohorts here at the SUCNIS conference when it was held back in Los Angeles a number of years back. We have a lot of cohort building activities throughout the summer. You might guess we have the aquarium here. So, aquarium trip is pretty popular. There's a lot of really good pizza places here. One of the nice things about having the partners is they will sometimes arrange field trips. So you're seeing one of our former students, Aaron, he was a meteorology. We have a coastal meteorology component in here. He does a lot of programming. He got to go on the Monterey Bay boat and actually drive the ROV out here in the bay. So he got away from the desk for the day. So our students get to kind of get the full suite of things that go on in Monterey when they're here. This number will get updated. And so for the first 6 years of our program, we were taking about 11 to 12 students a year. NSF likes the way that our program's running. So when we got renewed a couple of years ago, they bumped our numbers to 20 a year. We didn't take students last year because we weren't able to sort of pull off a virtual one. We went virtual this year and we actually had 40 students this year. But you can see our numbers here. Our participation rate to date is we have 63% underrepresented students in our group. The average is about 20 to 25%. I was told I'd be lucky to get that. So we're really overperforming in terms of attracting students to our program. You can see we've had 38 students from research limited institutions. And then among our alumni, we've had 3 NSF GRFP awardees and then 3 NOAA Hauling scholars. And I just want to highlight, some of our graduates here. So this is Daniel De Leon. He's an REU student. He was actually a Cabrillo College Community College student who used Google software to create sort of an AI program to identify different species of whales based on their song. So he came to us thinking that his only pathway in computer science was IT support because that's what he was told. But he came to us, found a different way of using his computer science tool. Google discovered him, I'm going to do air quotes, at a SUCNIS conference presenting his work. They created this whole marketing campaign around him. So you can actually Google, Daniel in the ocean and take a look at it. He transferred to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, got his degree in engineering. Now he's at the graduate program at Oregon State in Fisheries, where he's applying these same skill sets for his master's and subsequently his PhD degree. This is Paris. So he came to us from the University of South Carolina. He worked with the group at Mbari. Again, he was using a lot of mathematical programming to try to understand the origins of some deep sea scours on the seabeds. He applied to and actually got into the MIT Woods Hole Joint PhD program in oceanography. At the time he was accepted, he was the first African-American student that they had accepted into their program in the previous 6 years. He's a GRFP recipient going in there. And he was recently listed as one of Forbes 30 under 30 because he's doing some pretty innovative research on sources of green energy in the deep sea. So he's getting ready to graduate this upcoming year. This is Taylor, and so she was another one of our students. She did a project with marine mammals, decided she didn't like marine mammals afterwards. She actually applied to my lab for graduate school and was awarded a NOAA fellowship to undertake her master's work. So she was using a combination of drones and stable isotope work to look at marine protected area success. She recently graduated and now she's a coastal research specialist with the U.S. Geological Survey. This is Danielle Perry. So she's now Dr. Danielle Perry. She was out of our first cohort, and so she did her project with the Elkhorn Slough Group looking at nutrient runoff impacts on coastal marsh vegetation. She actually won top presentation award in marine science at the 2014 SUCNIS conference, recently finished her PhD at the University of Rhode Island in their oceanography program, and now she's a climate change adaptation scientist with Massachusetts Audubon. So what have we learned out of this? Well, one, leveraging multiple REU partners, what it does is it diversifies the research opportunities and actually, more importantly, the pool of potential mentors. This is one of the issues that pops up in smaller REU programs is mentor burnout. Every year we have a sort of a pool of anywhere from 45 to 60 mentors that we can draw on that students can select from. The other thing that having all these partners does, it actually presents students with a lot of different diverse pathways that they can start to think about leveraging their coursework in ways that they not thought possible. We've had a lot of students come in who are like, I'm on the dental track or I'm on the biomed track, who've come in like, I didn't know I could use my STEM training for these other careers. And they've subsequently gone in and done that. In fact, one of our first students was told her only way to work with animals was to go to vet school. She came here, used her disease training to look at marine diseases. She's actually now running the REU program for UNAVCO in Colorado, in Boulder, Colorado. And so she really sort of switched up what she was doing. You need active recruitment strategies. You can't just passively send stuff out into the void and hope you're going to get stuff back. You need in-person visits, and we adopted social media about 7 years ago. So we're really active and going to where the students are at. It's not on websites or on listserv. They're on TikTok. They're on Twitter. They're on Instagram. We're constantly on there trying to engage with different student groups. And then staffing. You need staffing to support professional development goals for an REU program. Like I mentioned, we're one of the few that is actually fully staffed REU program in this case. But that staffing has actually enabled us to do a lot of really cool and innovative stuff within our REU program. And you're seeing the results in a lot of things that our students are going on and doing, after they leave our program. So yeah, please, if you're interested in learning more about us, this is our website. We have an email. As I mentioned, we do have a pretty active social media account, so you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. We also have a Facebook page that's a little less active nowadays. That was the hot thing when we started. Twitter wasn't. Now they switch roles, but you can still find us on there. And if we have time for questions, happy to answer anything.
Great, Corey. Great talk. Quick question, and you alluded to this in your some of your last comments. What are some innovative strategies that you have used to engage underrepresented and first-generation students to bring them on into your REU program?
One of them with the recruitment trips that we do, it's framing some of the things we do relative to the communities they work with. For example, some of our local community colleges, some of the pre-pharmacology programs, we'll often present like why the ocean is important to stuff they're working on. Like it's the first time that they've learned about the horseshoe crab example, where they didn't realize horseshoe crab blood is actually used to test contamination in pharmaceuticals, right? Or some of the issues around antivirals that they have their origin in ocean organisms, right? The field of marine pharmacology. And so one of the things that we do is we really sort of talk about that the ocean isn't this out of sight, out of mind thing. It actually has an impact on your everyday lives. You just might not know about it or might not have been presented to you in a way there. With the computer science students, it's also, they're told, well, you're only going to do IT support or you're going to do like programming somewhere, right? It's also presenting the different pathways. And so I think one of the things you have to do is start to, one, present the topics in a way to connect with this cultural structure that they're coming out of, but also presenting in a way where this isn't some high-risk endeavor you're going on, where if you try to do this thing with the ocean, you're not going to have a job, that your skill sets can actually be applied here in a way where you're going to have a really fun and interesting career, and one that's actually probably going to be a lifetime career, if you manage to latch onto it. And so those are some of the things that we do. And as I mentioned, we also try to do some things in different languages as well when we can. We have some translators here, so we try to provide some of that, because sometimes the families, right, that's the other person, that's the other group you have to, right, you also have to work with, because sometimes the families are reluctant to let their kids go off, right, for summer research experience. And so we do some work around that as well, working with families like, no, we really are paying them. They actually are going to get paid. We will pay their housing. They will come back home. This is one of like the challenges we have with Native American communities. There's the fear of the brain drain, right? That we're not going to let them come back, right? And you have to have that conversation that, no, we're not bringing your students here or the members of your community here to keep them, bringing them back to train them, and when they can come back, right? Who knows what they can do when they go back. And so those are some of the things we have to sort of really think critically about when we're doing this type of recruitment in communities that have been historically just lacking or missing, right, in our particular field.
Great, thanks, Corey. And thanks to everyone who participated in today's presentations. You all did a great job. Speaker contact information is provided here. You can always contact any of the speakers in case you want to perhaps do a collaboration or even a proposal opportunity In addition, a link to the webcast will soon be made available on the STEMnet website. And for more information on this, you can always contact Monica Alarcon, Administration STEMnet Admin Analyst. And other previous webcasts can also be found on the STEMnet website. STEMnet is also interested in writing proposals with people within the CSU community. And in fact, we've written and been part of probably almost 25 proposals since last October. And finally, Dr. Tom Onak was a professor in the Department of Chemistry at Cal State LA from 1959 to 2000. He was a kind man with relaxing mannerisms that put everyone at ease when around him. A wonderful teacher and an outstanding scientist, Tom could have been a member of any chemistry department in the United States. Fortunately for us, he chose the Cal State system. Tom was the consummate teacher-scholar. His ability to craft research projects, mostly for undergraduates, inspired students' love for science and was a main force in their career success. I was fortunate to know Tom at 2 stages in my life. First as an undergraduate, when I worked under his auspices for 3 years, and later when I returned to Cal State LA as faculty, where we overlapped for 6 years until his retirement. I recall many a discussion about science, he and his wife's travels, their many cats, which were his babies, and stories about a life well worth lived. He inspired me to pursue an academic career. He was passionate about his work and his teaching. In his memory, I continue to pass on what he taught me to new generations of students, faculty, and sometimes deans, provosts, and presidents. Recently, I was forwarded from the Cal State Library archives a copy of the Campus College Times, dated May 24, 1965. It was here that I gained insight into the young Tom, the Tom I never knew. Then Chairman Tom Onak was interviewed commenting on faculty low morale, low salaries, the year's 1.8% salary cut, high teaching loads, and inadequate research facilities. Mind you, this is more than 50 years ago. He was quoted as saying, "The teaching load is absurd. Usually a professor will teach 12 units in the state college system and perhaps only 9 elsewhere. We're very fortunate to obtain people who are willing to work under these loads. Whether we will continue to get them, I don't know. We almost have to hedge about the workload to prospective faculty members," he added. In 1965, the master's program was beginning its 2nd year in the department. He stated that it has practically no state funds to support it. Most of it is presently supported by federal grants the chemistry department has been awarded, he said. Our reputation abroad is excellent at the present time, he commented, but if conditions do not improve, it is unlikely we will continue to attract the highly qualified faculty who have come in the past. Upon reading this, the first thing that came to mind was the 1976 concert film featuring the great English rock band Led Zeppelin, entitled "The Song Remains the Same." In some sense, the same issues that Tom Onak was commenting on over 55 years ago are still with us today, impacting students, faculty, and the quality of education. Tom's words resonate with the many conversations I have had with faculty, deans, and other administrators on an almost daily basis. In fact, just this week I have had several faculty and a dean approach me to discuss similar concerns. In my mind, I thought first about Tom. So, let's be proactive and look for solutions to these problems that impact us with the goal to improve the research and educational experiences we provide to our students and which we are proud of. I mean, today, it's, we just talked about the IRES and REU programs, which is all about students. Send me an email. I appreciate your thoughts. Lastly, and to all of you, be safe and may the rest of your day be a happy one. I now turn it over to our own wonderful Jennifer Wicks for a few closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Frank. And thanks to all of our presenters, all of our experts across the system for being here today to share their work. I want to just share, as Frank mentioned, a couple of announcements before we wrap. We would love to hear back from you about the webcast today and all of our webcasts. Please do, you can put your phone right up to the QR code there, take a picture, it'll take you right to the link. Monica Alarcon has set this up beautifully so that you can provide your feedback very easily. Switch to the next slide here. Encourage you to join our CSU STEMnet community listserv. She's going to be putting the links into the chat for that, so you can click on those direct, and also for the Facebook group. And The STEMnet Virtual Research Cafe 10.0, you can again register using that QR code. Put your camera right up to the screen there and click on that if you would. September 17th from 11 to 12. You see the presenters listed on the screen there. And also October 10th will be our next STEMnet webcast. And we encourage you to, October 1st it is, 10 a.m. to 12 noon. We encourage you to register using that QR code that you see on the screen. And Monica is putting in the link as well to where you'll find the recording for today's session. And if you'd like to learn more about the STEMnet program, you can visit the resources and the website right there by clicking on that QR code. So lots of QR codes for you today. So with that, we'll send you all off into the rest of your afternoon. Thank you again for your excellent presentations. Thank you to Dr. Gomez and Monica Alarcon and our production assistant, Kayla Perez, behind the scenes. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you again on in September and also October 1st. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Take care.